it for a living, but I do it in order to live, to have a better understanding of what's going to be coming before us. Many of you all may have a handout, so I ask that you look at the handout, and if you did not receive one, I'll be more than happy to electronically send a handout. I'll try to see if we can get some more. Everything you always wanted to know about dementia. How many of you all know that dementia is, and these are trick questions, so I'm trying to be a little funny here. How many of you all know that dementia is a disease? Raise your hand. A disease. So dementia is not a disease, you guys. Dementia is a syndromal term. Like cancer. Let's talk about cancer. This month is Cancer's Month, right? When a person or a doctor says you have cancer, that's a syndromal term. It's a syndrome. And the syndrome is characterized, when you talk about cancer, as a mass or a tumor in your body. Usually when a person says you have the disease, cancer, they'll ask you where. So if you have breast cancer, then that's when it becomes a disease. If you have lung cancer, it's a disease. The word cancer is just a syndrome that describes the disease. So for dementia, dementia is merely a syndromal term that characterizes the several diseases that I'm going to talk about. Briefly, review the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease, talk about the changes or progression of the disease. We're going to talk about the stages of Alzheimer's disease, and more importantly, we're going to talk about caregivers burnout and identify the resources to help with care as it relates to the disease. More than likely, you will be a caregiver of a person who's caring for Alzheimer's disease. You unfortunately may have Alzheimer's disease, or you may know someone with Alzheimer's disease. This is so important, and that's why I'm actually sharing this information. Now, Alzheimer's disease, before I get into a brief pathophysiology of it, it is a syndromal term, and actually it's a disease that is derived from the syndrome. As I mentioned, dementia is the syndrome. Dementia is based on memory loss, persons repeating themselves, judgment, mood, and behavior. Alzheimer's disease is one of the types of dementia. How many dementias do you think that are out there? Yes. A lot, thank you. Guess what number? 7? 67. There are over 100 types of dementias. Dementia has Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, Lewy bodies, frontal temporal dementia, concussions. I work at Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and when the lights go out at 6 o'clock, you'd be surprised who's walking through our door. Yeah. Go to the stadium, look on the field, and think who's walking into our door at night, because they don't want you to know. Concussions. That's a dementia. If I just share with you that dementia is when a person loses their memory, it's befitting that the bishop the other night, and thank you, First Lady Rel, for getting on Facebook, because I couldn't make it last night. But I was looking at live, and it was befitting how the bishop talked about, do you remember? And I said, wow. And the next day we're going to talk about, do you really remember? Does your family members truly remember? Have you tested them to determine if they didn't remember? So the more important thing I want you to know is, because we have so many